This is my first time doing land art. How do you make pieces in a space like this? It's already very much shaped, but just shaped by water and by forces of nature rather than an artist.
Simon and I, we knew we wanted to set up a residency. We weren't quite ready to move. We were moving from London. So we just thought we'd start doing some groundwork about where we would like to be. And we'd said no to Andalusia. Our kids were babies and we thought, oh, it'd be too hot. When we came to look at this place, we both fell in love with it completely. And it's now, you know, a lifelong project. Forever.
So we are a residency for contemporary international artists and writers at the intersection between creativity and the environment. We're also a non-profit advocacy association engaged with creative environmental projects, which is why you are here.
So we're a group of students from MA Art and Science at Central St Martin's, which is an interdisciplinary programme. Students come from a broad range of backgrounds and they're interested in the space between art and science.
This runs all the way behind that mouth of Almería, and it goes to a reservoir called the Pantano de Valinfierno, and that reservoir is completely full up with this material. So it doesn't hold any water anymore at all. This erosion is so massive.
Almería is the most arid zone in all Europe. And we have two types, intensive agriculture with the greenhouses, and we grow mostly vegetables.
There's a huge problem with water coming off the mountains through agricultural territory, taking up with it lots of fertiliser and nutrients, dumping those into the sea, and that changes the ecosystem of the sea. So there's this huge domino effect from this very one specific place that we find ourselves in to the entire southern Spain. That is amazing. Fingerprint. Yeah. Well, there's walls.
Whoa! What's here? Perfect holes. It's wasp nest, compressed clay. It's not a rock.
Oh, I'm just looking at this rock. It doesn't seem like limestone.
And I love it. It's so revealing of the tree. You know, you've got the whole strata of the tree, almost.
For me, it's like the strong presence of absence. Where is the water? You can see traces of the shapes, the way that it has shaped the landscape, but there is no water.
We have an ancient water catchment system on our land. It's fallen into disrepair as a consequence of land abandonment and more intense weather events. So if you imagine we're on sedimentary clay, you have a long hot summer, it bakes hard like concrete. And then autumn comes and you get one of those weather events. It rains onto the mountainside and it washes off because it's like rain falling into concrete essentially. Farmers here employed a kind of vernacular design to hold on to that water on the mountainside and stop it running off. So they adapted it by building these giant terraces, and they're done by hand and they're massive. And these run up the mountainside and it puts the brakes on the water runoff, holds onto that water, allows it to sink into the ground, but it carries on moving as a subterranean aquifer just 2 meters below the surface down the mountainside. These terraces are called bancales, and they're already on contour. They're already holding onto the water. So the whole system is already in place, just eroded and lost through time and memory. So the idea is we chop down some of the abundant pine trees and they make these little check dams, and then we plant in there plants like tamarisk. The roots get down, hold onto the soil structures and stop the water runoff.
So as it grows, a shrub?
Yeah. But a stringy broom shrub, but 3 meters tall sometimes.
Okay.
And then
so the students are contributing labour, essentially, to help build and maintain this system.
So what we're going to do is we're going to put these tree trunks in front to support the bottom, and then we've got to gather rocks to put behind, putting a bed in front of this terrace.
Did you miss me?
No.
No. You're cool? No, I'm just one of you lying. We're constantly compressing the branches with every layer.
The more dense it is, the more successful it
The more successful it will be
Yeah.
because it's organic matter as well. So as it breaks down, it reintroduces organic matter into the soil and it holds water better. Fozzie, take a break.
I always interpose it's quite complimentary.
So as well as contributing to this live environmental project, the students have an opportunity to make creative responses themselves to being here, to their experience of being in this landscape.
I was thinking about this idea of we, like collectively, because we have to create sort of a language with the earth. And I think that's why I wanted to do something collective, you know, something where it's like, it's not just me making something, it's us making something. We were planting together, and then I wanted to make art together. You know, also, it kind of goes into what I was talking about, including participants in the artwork and how to do that.
You have to use yourselves, if not, you cannot feel nature. You touch, you smell, you can manipulate, and is also related with the traditional uses. Some of them were used as a medicine, some of them were used for cooking. So you will see, we will put the pot in fire, and then we will obtain water and oil. And the oil in the past was sold to do perfume or to do medicines.
Don't drink.
I've been responding to all the plants we've been looking at and talking about. We found a pest in the area, and it's an invasive species, and it breaks off and tumbles and distributes all its seeds. I'm quite interested in plants moving into new territories as a result of climate change. But I was also thinking about erasure and how ecosystems completely are disappearing. So if you don't have the plant, you don't have the pollinator. If you don't have the plant and the pollinator, you don't have any animals. You know, you've got this sort of process.
One of the things I've been doing is finding the stones that have come down through the erosion and then crushing them. So I'm mostly looking for like stones that have like a pink-ish hue. This is my tool. So I'm trying not to bring any synthetic materials or conventional art supplies into the space. I'm trying to work with what is here and what is natural. I find it really interesting how fragile the place is, and wanted to also make art that is very fragile. Often when we think about art, we think about making lasting impressions. And working here, except from taking you guys, no one will see it. And it will also fade within days, weeks. One of them faded within a day because wind and crumbling and the shape continuously changing.
So it was a family community here. There were 5 little houses. So there were a lot of people living here. When we arrived, was absolutely overgrown because of the abandonment back in the 70s. It took a long time to actually pull the whole lot out and then start to see the signs of what it had been. So the embalser at the key point there, where the water, the the mountain rainwater would have collected. But you can see how they took the water down. So it would have been fed into the huerta here, where this is where they would grow their actual vegetables. The water will cascade down, oxygenating it into this pond, the regeneration zone, where it has aquatic plants that clean the water. So then it can be pumped back up, back again, cascading into the top of the embalser. As you know, it's clay-based, the predominant amount of land. But here, because they dug in so much organic material, amazingly rich soil, absolutely beautiful, and so perfect for the huerta, the vegetable garden, which is where we will then put ours in, now that the water catchment system is being worked on.
One thing that really could not get out of my head was how loose all of these elements were. So every single speck of dirt and soil and rock don't want to bind together because everything is so dry. I really wanted to work with water. Water is very scarce here, so I didn't want to waste it. So what I decided to do was to work with stones and ink. I've used like a calligraphy brush work to try and capture the shapes you can see in the edges. Everything about this piece is like a combination of working with water and trying to control it. It took so much labor. It really made me feel like I was back at the worksite. I collected these clay stones and I inked them with water-based inks, and I wanted to record them onto this canvas. So I sort of purposefully overloaded them with a little bit of water.
It's like a kind of visual story of what I've taken from being here. There's so many layers and so many things and events and emotions and situations that have occurred, and I've been trying to summarise it all. Some to do with the group, some are to do with the land and what I've taken from connecting with nature. Some are personal and introspective. I guess you were saying there's some overlap, so it's all simultaneously happening, so that accounts for the similarities.
Having our hands in the earth was so denuded and so dry, and there was so much wind and it was so harsh. And yet all these things are made from that very clay. Here's a pot made from the clay, but it's used for olives, which are very much of this landscape. And so I began thinking, as I looked at what dies in this landscape, what has died a long, long time ago. Not morbidly, but I just started thinking about time.
I guess I wanted to do circles because I'm thinking about the circular economy and how we're trying to use things from the earth and put things back to the earth and work more locally. And I also really like the esparto grass because it links with traditional knowledge and the whole idea of holding the rainwater being a system that was invented some time ago. So how we can bring together this kind of indigenous knowledge about food systems and water harvesting alongside kind of modern tech. So I've dressed the tree with, this is the weed from the barranca, which is used to identify water. You can tell there's water when you see this growing, and some weaving, and there's another piece of weaving on the circle.
Round and round the Hoya air, on the time, rosemary and thyme. Remember to hold the water in your mind.
very captivated by patterns and repetitions of layering of everything. So we have those waves here, but sometimes clouds are also wavy, and all the beds for almond trees are repeating this shape. And I started to repeat patterns of what I saw and what I imagined in my head. And when you go in the barranco, it's a lot of layers of ground that repeats itself, and so many interesting patterns. I had very much joy of creating and see how cyanotypes seep through the cracks and how they create patterns and play with like salt, clay, specks of dust and a bit of turmeric, as we can see yellow start. And you can just sit and observe how it morphs and changes. And I'm curious what will become in a week, in a half a year, in a year. Like, will it stay, or because it's clay and when river will be full, it will be washed away? I think it's the first time when I actually feel myself like an artist. Before that, I was Marie as a photographer, and now I create something volumetric, something that gives me more freedom and expression. And I'm very grateful for this place because it gave me this sense for the first time.
I started thinking about these forces of nature, this force of nature to create, to reproduce, to bring about life, as the force of the water to transmute soil into flowers. I started thinking about these flowers being created out of this kiss, this encounter of the materials. Yes, I wanted my internal landscape to be affected. Affection. I started thinking about love. So we're doing all this work of restoration, of caring for the environment out of love.
So this is an interdisciplinary problem. It's and the solution is bring in different disciplinary thinking. So bring in cultural practices, ecological understanding, and creative practice. This is, in some respects, a large sculptural project. You told me something on the first day, the kind of advice to give to the students. Do you remember what you told me?
Did I say, do not be in a rush, let it, immerse yourself in it, let yourself be relaxed into it, and it will slowly come. You have to really let yourself go into that flow, whatever that flow is.